Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here. Now, before we get into it, I'd just like to inform you about a new website selling quality current and retro Spurs jerseys, okjersey.com. They sell all current and retro Tottenham Hotspur shirts in all sizes. They sell the current fan and player versions, as well as the 80s and 90s retro shirts, including my very favourite, the 1991 FA Cup final shirt. You can order very easily from okjersey.com, and if you use the code Chris, you will receive an 8% discount off your final order. You can also use the QR code on the top left of your screen. And by the way, they also have some training wear here and the 25-26 colour special edition jersey. Hi everyone, hope you're well. Now, I don't know where to start in this edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast, because of course we are here to talk about the game. Burnley 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2. Certainly not the result we wanted, but please do get involved in this episode. Let us know how you are feeling right now in the comments section below. We're live, of course, on X, on Facebook, and Facebook as well. Facebook, X, and YouTube, sorry. Honestly, I don't know where to start. The Spurs fan base, the Spurs away end, singing a number of chants to Thomas Frank during the game and after the game as well. You're getting sacked in the morning. Thomas Frank, your football is shit. We want Thomas Frank out. And they were even singing 3 times on 3 separate occasions about former Tottenham Hotspur boss Mauricio Pochettino. Of course, boos from the away end again at the full-time whistle. I'm going to introduce the guest straight away. We've got Kate back with us. Kate, how are you?
Do you know what, Chris? They say a week's a long time in football, but 4 days has been a long time, because I was here on Tuesday and it was all happy. And now we're back to normality. So, yeah, I'm all right. Thank you, apart from being a Spurs fan.
Honestly, I feel all flustered because I feel like there's so much to talk about. I don't know where to start first. I'm going to introduce the guest first, and then we'll get straight into the football. We've got Harry back with us. Harry, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Of course, apart from Tottenham, I think frustrating result. And even though we get that point at the end, it still feels like a loss. It still feels like 2 points dropped. But as you said, a lot to get into, so won't take up any time. But thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
We've also got Luke back with us. Luke, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking into some sort of hypnotherapy so I can kind of like separate my mind from being a Spurs fan and my everyday life. So I can maybe like switch between the two and not have one affect the other anymore. I'll let you know if I come up with anything.
Right, let's get into it. Burnley 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2. Mickey van der Ven putting Spurs 1-0 up after 38 minutes. The equalizer from Burnley just before the half-time break on 45 minutes. And then Foster putting Burnley 2-1 up after 76 minutes. And Romero grabbing the equalizer at the death in the 90th minute for Tottenham, assisted by Wilson Odobert. Now, this draw at the moment puts Spurs up to 13th spot, 28 points from the opening 23 games. Now, the match facts and stats: Burnley had 37.1% of the ball to Tottenham's 62.9%. XG, Burnley 1.44 to Tottenham's 2.3. Shots, Burnley had 9 to Tottenham's 18. Burnley had 4 shots on target to Tottenham's 11. Total touches inside the opposition box: Burnley had 15, Tottenham Hotspur had 27. Goalkeeper saves: Burnley 9, Tottenham 2. Aerial duels 1, Burnley 8, Tottenham 14. Fouls committed: Burnley 8, Tottenham 9. And corners: Burnley had 1 to Tottenham's 3. Kate, I'm going to come to you first. What are your thoughts on this match? Because as I said, the away end again, boos again. This is becoming very, very normal. I feel like I say this literally every week, apart from Tuesday, of course, but every week in the Premier League. You know, we went from that very toxic atmosphere, particularly after the game against West Ham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last Saturday, and pretty much, well, I think it was a lot worse today.
Yeah. Look, I've been reading the chat. A lot of people said they think it was a better performance. We created a lot more chances, which is true because the XG shows that. However, it simply just isn't good enough. And I get the whole, we don't want to keep sacking managers, because I'm one of the people that's advocated sticking with him. But you cannot keep a manager that's not only wrong for the club, but it's also completely lost the fan base. And the away fans, you know, they're the ones that are usually the biggest supporters. People like yourself, Chris, who go all over the country, all over the world at times to support the club. You know, when you're losing those, I don't see that there's any way back. And obviously coming up with that goal at the end, which spared our blushes a little bit. Van der Ven, Romero, Van der Ven, 2 and 3 in our highest goal scorers for the season, speaks volumes. You know, it's a shambles at Spurs at the minute, and you know, no one was beating their man. I'm at a loss. You know, when I watched us on Tuesday, there was real green shoots, and I thought, wow, you know, maybe we have turned that corner. And then we watched today, and it just, you know, Vicario, again, I don't want to just scapegoat people, but he has got to. I don't know why Frank didn't just put Kinski in. He puts us in so much pressure, the way he plays out from the back. His distribution's terrible. He's got to go without any shadow of a doubt. He's got to go because we're edging closer and closer. Bournemouth are now 2-0 up against Liverpool. So we're dropping. We're getting closer and closer to a relegation scrap. West Ham seem to have found a bit of form. How long do we go, oh, you know, we've got to stick with him before we go, actually, do you know what? We're in a really precarious position. I can't see, for me, I can't see any justification of keeping him at the club. I just can't.
Kate, the scenes that you're watching now on screen, and for those watching on YouTube, Facebook and X, Thomas Frank walked over to the away end. You know, you saw Christian Romero first. Romero was first over to the away end, clapping the fans, put his hand up to apologise, and then Thomas Frank walked over to the away end and got a lot of boos, and you're getting sacked in the morning, and a number of chants, some of them that I can't even read out on this because it is a family show. But I just can it carry on like this with the abuse from the Spurs fans to Thomas Frank, because this is not a nice environment right now.
No, and it's not nice for Thomas Frank. You know, as much as I don't like him as our manager, as a human being, I think he seems like a really nice guy. And it's not fair on him. And toxicity spreads amongst the club. You know, we've got a lot of rumours about Mickey van der Ven wanting out. And it's just not what you want at all. For me, they've got to cut their losses. He's earning so much money, so obviously it's going to cost the club a lot of money to get rid of him, but you just can't keep on with it. It's going to get worse and worse. You know, we've got some really awful fixtures coming up, and I just think it's going to get more and more toxic as the time goes on. So yeah, for me, if he's not gone this weekend, I'll be at a loss.
Thomas Frank has just come out and said, I don't think it was a bad performance. It was maybe not the result we hoped for. Harry, what do you make of it today?
He says that every week. That's the frustrating thing. Listen, I'm struggling, you know, and this has hit me once again. I'm sure it has everyone, but I'm always trying to be as positive as I can. I'm always trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel and try and back this manager, because I know that the problems are a lot deeper at the club. But the reality is, you know, I think right now as a fan base, I've, you know, completely unified in wanting Thomas Frank out of the club, and it's a really difficult situation. And I would just stress that this is an ongoing situation that was the same last season, where we'd really struggle in the league but do well in Europe, you know, and it's almost like you couldn't write it, you know. In this case this season, 5th in the Champions League, you know, slipping, you know, dangerously in the Premier League, and with the games we've got coming up, you know, logic would tell you that Tottenham could find themselves in a difficult situation. What I mean by that is they could get dragged into something they don't want to get dragged into, and without, you know, stating the obvious, that is talking about a relegation scrap. And I don't think for a minute that Tottenham will go down. But again, just look at the games got coming up, and it could, you know, be a situation where we're like 2-3 points from the drop zone, and that shouldn't be a position Tottenham are ever in, if we're being honest with you, and that's hugely concerning. But again, me trying to be positive, I look at it and go, actually back us more in these tougher games, you know, like we saw against Dortmund, almost games that are free hits. But the problem is it wouldn't be a free hit with the situation we're in, so Tottenham don't get away with that. But Dortmund in many ways felt like a free hit when there's no pressure on Tottenham. What I'm trying to say is no pressure. I think again comes back to the whole mentality thing that Conte was trying to address. When there isn't that pressure there, yeah, we go there and deliver unexpectedly against Dortmund. We're very good when the odds are against us. They're hugely stacked against us. But when there's expectation, like we expect to beat Bournemouth, we expect to beat West Ham, you know, so many teams, Burnley, for example, Wolves, and none of those that I've mentioned, we failed to win. Didn't win any of them. We drew 2 and lost the rest. So hugely concerning, Chris. Someone that always tries to find the positives, and I can, if I, you know, really being difficult, I could look at it and go, I thought we played better. but football is a results-based business, and this is not a good result at all for Tottenham on paper. Burnley haven't won since October, and we nearly gave them, that win, and I'm glad we didn't, but we're saved again by our mighty two centre-backs. So, Chris, very, very disappointing, and after what we saw in Dortmund, I mean, it's just, again, steps backwards. But I think, hand on heart, Spurs fans deep down knew that this would be the case after Dortmund. We loved what we saw against Dortmund, but we knew this is Tottenham we're talking about. Realistically, we're going to struggle, and some even had us down to lose against Burnley. So, unfortunately, this is nothing new. It's continuing poor form in the league.
Harry, I think it's fair to say that you've been very, very patient with Thomas Frank when people have been calling Thomas Frank out in these last few weeks, last few months even. You've been one of those ones remaining very positive about him at the football club. How do you feel right now?
I feel hurt because I as much as I like Thomas Frank, as Kate said, there's a human. As much as I think he's a good manager, worked wonders, in fact, at Brentford. The reality is you have to accept that sometimes a manager is not right at a football club, or it's not of the benefit of himself, the club, or the supporters. And this is the prime example. I do look at it then, though, and go, who's going to come in right now and change our fortunes? And if we done anything like sack Frank and put an interim manager or permanent manager, which is highly unlikely till the end of the season, it'd only be because of that new manager bounce. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but the club might look at it and go, that new manager bounce gets Tottenham away from the relegation scrap, or it keeps Tottenham up. We shouldn't be in that situation, but we might have to consider that is something to look at, which it shouldn't be the case. So no, I'm hurt, and at the same time I look at it and go, I can always hold my hands up if it doesn't work, and it looks like it isn't going to work for Thomas Frank. For me, it's a matter of time, whether he goes now, whether he goes 3 games time, or more likely, I think, still at the end of the season. As much as fan pressure, of course, is tough for the board to deal with. This pressure continues every week. It's be very hard for them to hold on. If I'm being honest with you, I think they do hold on till the summer. I think that would be a Vinay-led decision, that they hold on and part ways in the summer. That, I think, would be, I want to say, the sensible thing to do, but this level of toxicity can't continue. So every game, I treat it like a game-by-game basis. And with the club doing that, that is part of the issue, because that level of uncertainty is a huge issue. It's all right, us fans sitting here and going, we're going to judge Frank game by game, but I don't think the club in their position can do that. So I'm hurt. I don't think Thomas Frank's a Tottenham manager, but I just know, and I'm so convinced that the problems lie deeper. That's why I want to give him time, because I know that we can have Pep Guardiola here and there's going to be problems. Looks like now, under this new look board, that they're going to get the time, but they certainly still do not get the back end. That's the frustrating thing. So for me, again, this is so difficult to say, but honestly, it's tough to know what to do. I would hang on to Thomas Frank for now while we're still doing well in Europe, but make no mistake about it, if this continues, then you have to pull the trigger, you have to pull the plug, however difficult it may be to bring someone in until the end of the year. For me, it just, what you're going to do, put his assistant in charge. That's the thing. I don't see anything going, boom, this is, clearly a lot more attractive. I think because we're in the situation we're in, and because we're experiencing football and life under Thomas Frank, it's so easy to go, look, let's just get rid of this. But my argument is, what's the alternative? So it's very difficult. And at the same time, I'm sitting here, although I'm defending a lot this manager, I'm also sitting here telling you I think we'll be in a relegation scrap. I don't think we'll go down, but we'll be in a relegation scrap. And again, that is never acceptable. So, Chris, it's extremely difficult. I wouldn't, blame the board if they got rid of him. For me, I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But if the supporters, which I believe they do, want the back of Thomas Frank and united in that thoughts, then you have to listen to the fans. It's not about what I want. It's not about what I think about the owners. It's about what the fan wants and what serves his club best. That's the most important thing. And I would lastly just stress that, any individual is not more, the club is more important than any individual, any manager, any player. So in terms of any player that may look to leave Tottenham in the future, or Thomas Frank as well, Tottenham means a lot more. So you have to take the best interest of the club. And even though we don't like Thomas Frank, I still hope that as supporters, we want to win every game, regardless of our thoughts of the manager, because the club is more important. So Chris, it's not very good times. And as someone who's positive, being behind this manager is very tough, and it gets harder week by week. It's not a good look.
Yeah. To be positive, try to pick a positive moment that we've had in games over the weeks, but league performance last week and picked up a 2-team relegation zone right now. When you look at those fixtures, Manchester City, Manchester United, we've got 3 out of the games at Hotspur Stadium as well, where we have really, really struggled of late, and of course. I'm looking at those fixtures, thinking, where on earth are we going to pick up points? And like you say, you've got to look now behind us. Teams like West Ham picking up points today. I think it's worrying at the moment. And when you consider on how the fan base is feeling about Thomas Frank collectively, particularly the away end, I've never known sing on this amount of things to a man. The manager extremely awkward away end after the day. Let's get your thoughts on the game.
I think the thing I'm worrying about that I think we're starting to see now, and we saw in the game today, is that I think the players have got the relegation jitters in them, and I think you can actually see it. And the way that comes across in the match is that you're seeing players make runs that they perhaps wouldn't normally make. They're missing short passes because they're snatching at opportunities, or they're rushing things, or they're not really thinking about the position. They're lunging into challenges. There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of sort of very scrappy football happening at points in the game when we're either down or we're trying to chase a game to try and win it. And it's because I think they spend time on the training ground worrying about the position in the league. Okay, we have to go and win this game. And when you start putting that kind of pressure on yourself, you start snatching at opportunities, you start rushing things, you stop thinking and rationalizing and being calm and composed. And you have to be composed. The quality of those players will shine if the composure is there. If they're a bit slower, if they take their time, if they don't try and rush chances, they pass the ball around a little bit more, but they're trying to rush everything. Everything's too fast. You've got players like Spence and Odobert today who were both brilliant, I thought, and frustrating in equal measure. They both overran constantly. They were running into defenders, or they would try to do a pass when there was nobody there and there was no pass on, because really there should have been someone there. And that's where you've got this mentality is now starting to seep into them, that they are frightened of losing games. And it's actually, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're terrified of losing games. So you start, performing badly, and then you lose games, and then you're terrified of losing the next game. So you start making mistakes and snatching at it, and you get yourself into a bit of a spiral. And that's what I'm frightened of at the moment. And my thing with Frank is, I've always said I think managers need time. But the one thing that makes a manager's job untenable is if you drop into a relegation battle, particularly a club of the size of Tottenham Hotspur. And when you look at the teams around us, I think we've beaten 2 or 3 of them. And quite a few of them have beaten us. We are well in that scrap. The only saving grace is if you look at West Ham's fixtures and you look at Burnley and Wolves' fixtures, they also have to play a lot of the teams that we've got left. They do have, particularly West Ham, have some difficult fixtures coming up. So, you don't want to be in the position where you're hoping that both, if we don't get points, we hope they don't either. That's pathetic, really, isn't it? And that's not the position we want to be in. So for me, I think Frank has made his job untenable. And one way in which he's done that as well is, I really like him, and I thought whenever he spoke at Brentford, I thought he sounded great, but I think he's immediately come into this job and the pressure has got to him. The comments after the Bournemouth game about this is a difficult place to come. I mean, yeah, they're a tricky team, but you can't honestly sit there and say that when they haven't won for 11 games. He will probably, I haven't seen all of his press conference now, but he'll probably say that at some point today. It's a difficult place to come. It's not. Everybody's going there and beating them. That's why they're at the bottom of the table. So you are setting the team up psychologically to be okay with not winning. Now, they don't look like that. I don't think the players look extremely disappointed. I mean, you look at Xavi Simons' face for most of the game. He just looked distraught. But for me, it's in their heads. We're going to find this hard. We're terrified of losing. We are in a real spiral. I think the players are in a spiral at the moment. And I think the only way to get out of that is that new manager bounce, and that will save us this season. But as Harry mentioned, I don't trust the board to make the right decisions. They've been making bad decisions for a long time now, at least since those barren transfer windows under Pochettino. We've just been making poor decision after poor decision after poor decision. I don't doubt that they could probably find someone. I think Harry Redknapp would probably get everyone off their feet, and he would play, probably absolutely bonkers football for the next 10 games, and we'd probably survive. But are they going to go through the right process and pick the right person to come in for the start of next year? I mean, apparently they went through a very thorough process for Thomas Frank, and look where we are now. So I do think the problems run much deeper. but I also think a different manager would be doing a better job with this team right now. I think there are quite a few that may have just got us a bit further up. And the thing that Ange, I think, really got the club. I think that, from after those first 10 games, we were very up and down under Ange, but I think he really understood what we wanted to see, and that was sort of maximum output and effort every week. He got it wrong in the defensive structure. He was too stubborn. He had his issues that caused him problems, but Frank has taken on this ultra pragmatic approach that does not fit Tottenham Hotspur. It really doesn't. And despite the fact that things didn't go well under Ange in the league, he got the club, and that football was more attractive. And I think that's why many more people stayed on his side, and why people are turning against Frank. It's a bit of a dire situation, but yeah, today for me, I thought you could see a nervousness in the players. When they attack, you can see a little bit of improvement, particularly on the wings. You can see that kind of triangular play working a little bit. Spence into Odobert and Solanke dropping in and then passing to create space and try and get someone down the wing. But it was just ending the same way every time. It was either they ran straight into the fullback, or the first cross just headed out and it was gone. And the fact that we go away to Burnley and we've got to rely on set pieces to get a goal is frankly a bit pathetic, really, when we have got an excellent record there. And it was 2 seasons ago and they last in the Premier League. We absolutely blew them away, and we regularly do. So, I think we're approaching games the wrong way. I think the manager he can lose the fans all he wants, but if he loses the confidence of the players, if the players are coming into these games every week and they don't feel like we should be winning here and this is how we're going to do it, then I think that's it. Your goose is cooked, so to speak.
Now from Thomas Frank. Straight after this clip, Kate, we'll come to you on your thoughts on what Thomas Frank has had to say.
Thomas, thanks for joining us. It's ended 2-2 at Turf Moor. I mean, look, we fought back at the end and got the point, but this feels like a game we should have won.
It's definitely a game we should have won. That's very frustrating not to stand here with 3 points. I think the boys do a lot of things right throughout the game. I think especially the first half is good. Coming here, dominating. On top of it, we score the 1-0 goal. We could have gone the second. And the second, I think we are, if not out of sight, we are definitely in an even better position. Then we concede a goal just before halftime. We can never ever concede a goal. And that just bring a little bit bad feeling into the changing room. Try to do everything we can to change it. Coming out, I think second half is not as controlled in the way we want it to be. We still create a big chance to Dom. They could have put us 2-1 up, and then momentum changed a little bit again. Then we concede another goal. Can't concede that either. After that, the boys show great character, fighting, doing everything they can to go back in the game. And we create 3 or 4 big chances, score on one of them, get 2-2. But it's frustrating we don't get 3. We should have gone 3 with the performance.
You're right. It's the goal just before half time, isn't it? Because, I mean, we got up to 10 efforts at goal in the first half before they equalised. Yeah. You just think one of those goes in, Dubravka doesn't make one of those saves, and then we're away, aren't we?
Yeah, I agree. I think first half, that's where we need to football about momentum. And when you're on top of it, you need to score the second goal, which we didn't. But if you don't do that, then make sure we don't concede the 1-1, and that's the big thing.
I can see why you're getting frustrated, because when I'm looking at these games. Bournemouth should have won it. West Ham should have won it. Today should have won it, really, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think that's extremely frustrating that we are standing here with doing a lot of things right, not perfect, but a lot of things right, and more than enough to get a lot more points than we got. But there's only one way. That's head down, work hard, do more. Keep fighting, keep doing the right things, keep walking forward, and that we will do.
And just before I let it go, Pedro and Kuti okay under that? Obviously they came off.
Yeah, Romero is fine, just cramping. Pedro, is fine. There's also a little bit of physical fitness. He played a lot of minutes, put Jet to the right, and then Destiny on.
Kate, let's come to you. What do you make of Thomas Frank's comments there?
Do you know what? He's one of these people who says a lot without really saying anything at all. Like he states the bleeding obvious basically by saying we could have done this, we should have done that, we should have done this. Well, we all know what we should have done, but we didn't do it. You know, the first goal that he talked about, their goal just before half time was all Vicario's fault again, dithering about and throws it out, which I can't remember, it was missed it and it went out for a throw in. It all came from there. I would have far more respect for Thomas Frank if he came out and said, you know, we're trying, but we're short on personnel. We need more like investment in this club. We need people in, rather than just keep waffling on about we're doing so well, we deserve more points. You get what you deserve most of the time. And everyone always says the Premier League table doesn't lie. And there isn't such a thing anymore in the Premier League as an easy game. So I find him incredibly frustrating to listen to. He just waffles saying what he thinks people want to hear, which isn't enough. But he does look like he's kind of, I want to say he looks like he's resigned to losing his job. But then when we saw the press conference the other day, when he spoke about having a wonderful lunch with Vinay and Johan and whoever else, and having chicken sandwiches and what other cobblers he waffled on about, I don't know if he is resigned to losing his job or whether he knows that he's got the support. But I mean, I listened to Harry and he says, I've no doubt Tottenham aren't going to go down. I just don't know if I'm that sure that we're not going to go down. I remember the season that everyone said West Ham won't go down. They're too good to go down. And they ended up going down. And I think if we don't move quick and get rid of this guy, it could really happen. I mean, 5 wins in 20 games is absolutely horrendous. I found myself wanting to smash my computer when I listened to him, because like I say, he states the obvious, doesn't really offer any solution for it, and just basically tries to make out that we've been kind of unlucky, which doesn't win you football games at the end of the day.
Harry, before we come to you, we're going to also hear from Javi Simmons on the 2-2 draw.
Okay, Xavi's here. Xavi ended 2-2. We got a late equaliser, but it feels like a game we should have won.
Yeah, we needed this 3 points, so I would say we deserve it to win. But yeah, this is what it is, and we have to continue.
The first half, that system worked so well, and we got ourselves in front and we were in control. Was it that equaliser just before half-time that rocked us a little bit?
Yeah, I think we cannot concede this goal 1 minute before the half-time. We spoke about it. And yeah, then you're trying to come the second half and they scored the first one day, and that's hard. But at the end, keeping working and not leaving the game.
Second half, we weren't in as much control, and then they get ahead. But then we just threw everything at them. You hit the crossbar as well. The keeper's made 9 saves, Xavi. I mean, you must be wondering how we've not come out of here with a win.
Yeah, we had a lot of chances, but at the same time, what I said before, we cannot concede this type of goals, because that are points that we are living here, and we know that. So yeah, it is what it is. We have to continue, and yeah, Tuesday next game.
You just come out of the dressing room. I mean, what's the feeling in there? You must all be disappointed.
Yeah, we are all disappointed, and yeah, we have to go on and continue to work, and then we'll see what will happen.
Harry, let's come to you. As it was said there, Tottenham did create a lot of chances. Dubravka had to say, a fair few chances from Tottenham today. Is this all on Thomas Frank, or should we have been better finishing in the game at Turf Moor?
Of course, it's both, but I don't like the narrative that's been painted by A, the interviewer, and also B, Thomas Frank, and then Xavi Simmons there, that we played this perfect game. Another day we would have won, right? A perfect performance, you win the game. You find a way. If you're that perfect, you always find a way. That's the reality. The best teams, they find a way. And listen, performance matters in football, but I'm someone that thinks results are just what matters, right? The only reason the performance matters is that eventually it's more than likely to catch up with you. As Kate says, in the end, you get what you deserve. But for the short term, it's about results. And when you're in the situation that we're in, Burnley as well, by the way, it's all about the results. Performance comes after. And the thing is, the performances are inconsistent as well as the results. Against Burnley, that's the type of game where the result is only what matters. I personally don't care how much of the ball we have, how many shots we have. I know a lot of people are different, but it's the result. That's the thing. I like playing pretty football under Ange, but we knew we were going to lose in the league every week. That's the thing. But also to flip it on its head, we knew we were going to win in Europe. It doesn't matter how. We'd found a way somewhere or the other. And that's the thing. The result for me is so important. But again, I just listen there, and it sounds like Thomas Frank thinks we're kind of nearly there, which is a little bit concerning. I wish he would kind of say we've got so much to improve on. As Kate says, you've got to be careful what you say in his position, of course. But if I was him, I'd just be honest, because he's been honest so far, and it hasn't got him very far. But you're going to take that line. You've got to continue down that line. I'd just say, look, the reality is we are still far away. You can still back the players, but also be honest. You've got to get that balance, because you can say, yes, a lot of games we lose by a single goal, because that is true, but still we need to do so much more, because instead of losing by a single goal, we need to be winning this game. It's not that we're just one goal away in most games. We're a couple of goals away where we should be, again, if we focus just on that result. Again, I'm a firm believer that the problems are upstairs. Of course, not in this game individually. I'm not going to hold Enoch accountable for this result necessarily, but I do hold them accountable for, our January business. And, if we sign Robertson, I know we'll get into him sure later. Of course, I'm very happy at signing Gallagher. I'm happy. Sousa, I'm happy. We still have to do a lot more. Only one fit winger at the club in Odobert, who's arguably not even being used as a winger in the formation today. So that's the frustration. I think personally, I view it, Chris, he's been asked to build a mansion and he's been given little to no tools to do so, or broken tools, if you want to put it another way. But you're still in charge of how you manage those tools. And he's dropping those tools on his feet, like bricks. And he's causing trouble. Ultimately, that's the thing. He doesn't know how to handle those tools, even if those tools aren't very good. And those tools haven't been supplied properly with utter incompetence upstairs. That's how I view it at Tottenham in the simplest term. So because Enoch are so incompetent and so unambitious and so utterly clueless on the football side, business side is different, of course. Of course, you have to put it in a bigger picture that it's not all on Thomas Frank. But it doesn't mean you can get away with it. You can be a bad teacher in a school, but the school's really badly run. Of course, the main problem is how it's run upstairs, but it doesn't mean that you as a teacher, because you're not doing your job, should get away with it. That's how I view it with Thomas Frank. And that's been my argument for so long. Frank isn't perfect. He's making the mistakes and he's frustrating to listen to, but please just open our eyes a little bit and realise that when he goes, another manager comes in, it's the same problem. Antonio and Conte and Jose Mourinho, sorry to bring it up again, but both won everywhere but Tottenham. Frank has to take responsibility. He picks the team. Why is Tell not in that lineup? He didn't play in the week. He's fresh, boom, ready to go. Why is he doing that? Why is he changing the formation in a game like this? Why? Why are you going to do it after you play well against Dortmund in a different formation? Why are you going back to something that previously hasn't worked very well for him? It just doesn't make sense. So he continues to say things and do things that don't help himself. But I know someone comes in on an interim basis or permanent basis in the summer, let's just say, and we're having the same type of conversation. Frank's accountable, but also I'd look above him.
Luke, let me come to you on Thomas Frank's comments there. And I'm going to upload the press conference in a couple of minutes, so we'll get a different perspective as well from those journalists asking Thomas Frank the questions. But Frank out at the moment is trending on X. As I've said, a number of chants and a number of things sung to Thomas Frank today, and the boos at the end of the games. This is becoming very, very normal, which is very, very sad to see. But what I touched on earlier about, us playing two games in 2 weeks, two matches where we're playing teams in the relegation zone, including today. Spurs 8 points above the relegation zone, 1 win in our last 7 Premier League games. If we can't beat the likes of West Ham and Burnley, going into February where we're playing some top sides, are you worried?
Yeah, I am. And I think it's not like it was last year where the bottom three was so obviously cut adrift so early on. And I was just having a look actually at the season where Frank with Brentford had to deal with a really awful injury crisis and had, I think it was Wissern and Burmo and Tony all injured at the same time, and how he dealt with that. And they finished 16th in that season, but they were really comfortably safe, I think by 13 points. So they were very comfortably safe at that point. But they lost 19 games. So that means in our next 15, if we were to replicate that, we got another 10 defeats coming. And that, I think, this season, with the way things are, that would send us down. That season where they finished 16th was where Luton, Burnley and Sheffield United all went down. Another season where the 3 that came up were all rubbish and they immediately went back down again. We don't have that this year. I think, for me, it's got to be a cut-off. You've got to say, that's it, you had your time. The job if we think about it, he started off when we were still patchy form, but we were still winning games every now and then in his press conferences saying, oh, but this is a long project. I can't fix this overnight. And now that we're right down there and we've won so few games in the last sort of 15, he's going, we're so close. He's like, hold on a minute. You said we were miles off and it was a big job, and now we're really close. It's got to be one or the other. And I feel like I think managers get to this point, and I think that the people above them should realise this as well, where they are a little bit bluffing. They're over-talking themselves to keep themselves in the job. He's not going to go out and say, and maybe he could, and we'd probably all like him a bit more if he did. But if he walked out and said, do you know what, I told them what to do today and not a single one of them managed to do it. Vicario can't pass the ball and he's a professional footballer. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying my best here, but this team's a mess. You might actually think, oh, okay, but he'd lose the dressing room immediately, wouldn't he? And then he'd be gone straight away. But what he's doing now is almost worse. He's almost talking it up constantly. And the board seems to be just buying that and allowing that to keep happening, because it's the same thing. Levy always had this with his managers. It gives a buffer of embarrassment for the board. And Harry's right in saying we have to keep looking beyond Frank to the board, because they always used to use the manager as the buffer for the criticism that they should be receiving. It was always, yeah, but look at Conte blowing up and having a rant at us. He just hates Tottenham. Let's sack him. And actually, the point is that we've got problems all over the place. But I'm really, in answer to your question, Chris, I am really worried, because those next few games, I mean, home form, terrible. We've got quite a lot of home games. Those big games we're playing against Arsenal, City and Liverpool are all at home, aren't they? So really, we should be saying, is Liverpool at home or is that away? That's away, isn't it? But we've got... City and Arsenal at least at home. You'd be thinking, well, everyone should be given an extra 50% against Arsenal. City, we've actually got a really good record against, and at home we should be, worrying them. But I can't see it happening. And I can't see it happening because week in, week out, he's making, I think, mistakes in the lineup. As Harry mentioned today, I thought the lineup. Actually, I'm going to contradict myself a bit. I looked at that team today and I thought that team should beat Burnley. Those 11 players should go out there and they should beat Burnley. Despite the injury crisis, there were 11 players on the pitch there who should have been good enough to beat Burnley. There's a lot of attacking talent. Some of those players are very expensive. Some of them have shown us what they could do. Burnley are a team that have, players who are maybe journeymen, or they work really hard, but they're not flashy. They've got players like Kyle Walker, who's coming to the end of his career. We should be beating them. And when they sat in a low block, we had no idea how to pick them apart. We were really struggling with that. We were very slow in build-up. The players looked like they weren't really sure where the runs were being made. There was some good work with the triangles on the right and then on the left. And then when he made a change in the second half with Spence moving over to the right, I think that slightly improved. Doggy has looked good since he's come back. But it's still slow. It's pedestrian. They're not scared of us. They weren't worried about us. They were quite confident to sit back and counter-attack us. And when that goal went in on the 76th minute, you could see it coming. It was either going to be that we were going to score from a ball crossed into the box, or they were going to do it on a counter-attack, and it happened. It's just, you feel like you could probably sit down and write it beforehand. And then, of course, are having to be saved by Romero again. The bizarre thing about that is, if he had brought on another attacker and taken off a centre-half earlier, then that player would have been able to keep the pressure up front against Burnley. But instead, Romero was having to run the length of the pitch each time to try and make sure that he was dangerous in both boxes, or useful in both boxes. That is bonkers, and that isn't going to last. And that makes me think something that Dustin said a week or two ago on here. He said that he thinks that some of the players are just doing what they think is right in the moment and abandoning the game plan. I just wonder if it was a bit of that again. But yeah, I'm really concerned, Chris, and I feel like we're going to have to go through February and half of March and be right on the cusp before we get to the point where we feel like maybe we could turn things around. Those games against Fulham and Palace in the middle of that awful run, they are massive games now. And the pressure on the players is just going to mount and mount and mount. I'm very concerned.
Okay, talking about Thomas Frank, do you feel like because we finished 17th last year, and the fact that he keeps reminding people that we finished 17th last year, does it kind of give him a free pass to say, well, we finished 17th last year, so anything above that, because I found it a really interesting question that one of the journalists asked him in the embargoed press conference ahead of this game and said, are you in a relegation fight? And he said, I'm just concentrating on winning and performing against Burnley. And he didn't say, no, we're definitely not in a relegation fight, where I think a lot of other previous Spurs managers, they would have gone, absolutely not. We're not in a relegation fight. No, we want to be, gunning for a top European spot. That's not really being said. The message that is being put out, particularly from Thomas Frank, a number of times, and you even mentioned it about the lunches. He has lunch 3 times with V-Night every single week, and he's mentioned these lunches with the other board members as well. What do you make of this? Do you think that Thomas Frank will be here? Can it really continue? These types of performances and results, can this continue?
I think the most damning stat is that Arsenal can go 25 points ahead of us tomorrow on the 25th of January, and how much we've fallen, which is just, it's unfathomable when you think of how it's shifted. I think, I don't want this to sound really detrimental, but I think Thomas Frank has got that lower club mentality in a way. All right, we finished 17th, we're not in a relegation scrap, whatever. But for a team like Tottenham to have finished 17th, that was huge. I know that we ended up winning the Europa League, thank goodness, but that's totally unacceptable. I don't ever, it's been a long time since I remember finishing anywhere near that sort of level. So although when he came in, I know some people expected him to make a huge difference. I thought we'd be in the top 7. No one expected it to be this bad. Everyone said last year, if we get a good coach in, they'd get more out of this team. I just don't think Thomas Frank is a good enough coach. I don't think he could inspire anything. I watch him on the sidelines chewing his chewing gum, and he looks a little bit lost. I watched him in his press conferences, in the interview after the game. He looks a little bit like a rabbit caught in the headlights. And I think that step up from Brentford to Spurs, and obviously Brentford are doing a lot better than us this season, which says to me, was he really that brilliant at Brentford? Or was it just that they're run in a really sort of, I don't want to take anything away from him, but they're a very well-run club. And, he's left and they're doing brilliantly, but he's come to us, and I don't really see that much difference. If we'd have kept Ange, I don't know what would have been that much different, if I'm perfectly honest. He was brought in to fight on all 4 fronts, and he's doing worse than Ange was he went out the cup sooner, and I don't know. All this, I went out to lunch. Is he trying to convince himself he's safe? Is it a message to the fans to say, you can say what you want, but the board have got faith in me? I don't know. For me, I'm with Harry. I could see them quite happily staying with him, because I just think the board are a bit cowardly. And I think Vinay is one of these sort of CEOs. He was like it at Arsenal, who will dig his heels in and say, look, we've got to back this guy. But for me, when the stadium and the away fans in particular have turned like that, there's no going back for me. He's lost the fan base. We're the most united fan base we've been for as long as I can remember of recent times, probably since Poch. And we're united in the fact that we want this guy out of our club. So I don't know how he stays. But at the same time, like I say, it wouldn't surprise me if they keep him. But I hope that they don't.
Harry, on 3 separate occasions during the game, the Spurs fans in the away end were singing Mauricio Pochettino's name. What do you make of that? And would you like to see Pochettino back one day?
Firstly, Pochettino done a great job at the club. And this goes back to what I'm saying. The biggest mistake was to get rid of him. Let's be clear about that. That was a shocking decision. And I've got to be careful I say this, but reaching the Champions League final and winning in Bilbao were great things, but they created a problem. They created a sense of a little bit of entitlement amongst us fans. It was just an issue. But the main issue is it created a sense of greed from the board, from Enid. Can you listen? If you just listen to what Levy had to say after we won in Bilbao, it was, oh, we want more of this, we want more of this. You could tell he was plotting something. I didn't necessarily think he'd get rid of Ange that quickly or ultimately that brutally where he was on holiday. But I did think, oh my God, he's on something here because he's consistently banging on about, we want this more, we want this more. It was coming up with a plan. And what it is, they like the taste of something that they don't know how to deliver. And when someone else delivers it for them, they then go, oh, we want more of that, but we don't know how. And again, we just get trigger happy and make the decisions. I think as a club, as a fan base, we get trigger happy. And I think with Pochettino, it's a real huge mistake. Some will say don't go back in football. At the same time, you've got to think who brought you good times ultimately. So I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not against it or anything like that. At the same time, though, I don't want him to ruin what he had previously because, again, these owners would let him down. And it's not a good look. And he'd be remembered, whether people like it or not, because of what Pochettino done. It should be remembered for the good things. But as football fans in general, as human beings, we have short-term memories, particularly it seems to be football fans. So we'd only remember this second spell. And let's say it was similar to what we're seeing now. He'd be remembered for that. And that isn't fair to him. And it's not how we want it to be. So I would be for him coming back. I don't think it's helpful for fans to chant that. I can understand why they do. I don't think it's helpful during the game. I'd rather them use that voice and that ambition to help spur on the team. A reminder that the supporters, our role is to support the team through thick and thin. Majority of our Spurs fans do. They're great. And, full credit to all the ones that went in numbers again for this game and have travelled. Kate said earlier for yourself, Chris, it applies to you and everybody else that's still in their numbers every week, home and away. Those are proper supporters. And when you lose away supporters as a manager, that for me tells you your days are numbered. That's what it tells me when you lose those hardcore away fans. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we saw it at one of the first occasions, Brentford away. And when I saw Frank being booed and chanting, I thought, this is it, because you lost the away fans. It's through grumbles at home, when I was there in and around me. And I thought, okay, that's quite a regular thing. Unfortunately, when you lose the away support, that's the problem. So for me, Pochettino will be open for him returning. But again, I don't think any move for Pochettino is, of course, feasible till the summer. He locked in that contract with the US. So it's something that'll be interesting to see what happens. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know who, but one of Mauricio Pochettino's coaching staff did not go with Pochettino to the US. So do the club look at bringing him in to an interim basis to the end of the season and appointed Pochettino in the summer? Thinking outside the box here and something putting two and two together. But we'll have to see what happens, Chris. The reality is that, we could have anybody right now, but if you don't sign the players that's going to make you compete. If you keep buying from relegation struggling clubs, you keep buying from clubs that either don't want their players or they're just going in the wrong direction. You're not, that's the thing. If we're ending up like West Ham, because we're constantly buying from them at the moment or interested in their players or similar, we buy players just because they've gone down or they're about to go down. I'm all for taking advantage of players. We need to start being in the market for these big players. Look at some of the players briefly that made a move this window. Semenya, Gay, this type of player. Tottenham should be in this conversation. I know we don't necessarily need a defender. Semenya, for example, we desperately need a winger. Why Tottenham never in these conversations? Why is it City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool? Well, yes, we were, but he said no. But again, why is he saying no? And that's the problem, because the owners have set at the club and set us up, for me, ultimately to fail and made us unattractive. They believe having, again, the furniture, it goes back to my point, having the mansion while neglecting it and putting nothing in it, is not an attractive prospect. And I'd say it again, Tottenham are not an attractive prospect. Gallagher's joined great. Well, how many times have we been after him? That's the frustrating thing. So for me, we need to do so much more in the window and everything. I can link it again back to Pochettino, goes back to the owners, whether they're willing to change or not. Because it's a new look board, fans are treating the owners as new owners. They're not. These are the same owners, the same problems. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. And much I want Pochettino here, and I used to hate those fans, right? I used to sit here and go, oh, we could have Pep Guardiola and won't go anywhere. They used to really wind me up, if I'm honest with you, with something that's positive. But the more you go back and listen to what they said, and the more listen to what people say now, it's actually true if you think about it. Like, of course, state the obvious, Pep Guardiola comes in, we're not where we are now, but we're not significantly in a better place. Same if Pochettino come in, because in life, in football, if you're not given something to succeed, you cannot succeed. You can work miracles in the short term, but how long is that going to keep going? And that's the thing. Pochettino, yes, had a good squad, but also a lot of them were nobodies before he signed. And, that's the thing. So, yeah, I would have him back, Chris. I've gone around the houses here, but I would have him back. It all links back to the owners for me, which is sad to say, really, that, they've set the kind of foundations of the club wrong. And, it's a sad time at the moment.
Harry, let me stay with you for a second. Very quickly, talk me through the starting 11 today. What did you make of it? Vicario, Danso, Romero, Van der Ven, Porro, Spence, Gallagher, Basuma, Odegaard, Simmons and Solanke. And the subs today, Byfield, Dragusin, Gray, Kinski, Mawani, Scarlett, Tell, Udogie and Williams-Barnett. Now, I look at this team, exactly what Luke said a couple of minutes ago. When you look at this team, you think, we're going to a team in the relegation zone, particularly the way that we played against Dortmund on Tuesday. Spurs should be winning this game. Yes, we could look at all of the stats. They were positive stats, and I tell you what, they're a lot more positive than some of the podcasts or some of the game stats that we have looked at in recent months. So, this team should have won today. Javi Simmons looked absolutely distraught after the game there, stating exactly the same thing. We should have won the game. Where did it go wrong for Tottenham, in your opinion, today?
How much time have you got, Chris? It might be easy to ask the other question, but the point is the panelist with me here, Luke, is absolutely spot on. And you're right, you say it there, Chris. That team on paper, regardless of the manager and whatever he tells them to do, rightly or wrongly, they're capable of going out there and getting a result. And like with the defenders, like Romero and Van der Ven, I think 9 goals or something between them this season. Incredible. I mean, you can look at it 2 ways, depending on if you're glass half empty, half full person. You can look at it and go, great tactic from Thomas Frank, to use the physical presence and, the aerial ability, for example, Van der Ven and Romero, getting in good positions. Very similar situation at Brentford. Nathan Collins used to score on a regular occasion. Pinnock. If you look at like Brentford's games against Liverpool, City, Chelsea, the defenders, centre-backs in particular, constantly scoring. Or you could look at it, and this is how I personally look at it, I think they take initiative a little bit. They look around them and go, you're incompetent, you're not doing your job, manager's giving you the wrong direction, we'll step up and deliver. And I view it as they saved us once again. Where would he be without them, by the way? But it's important to note that this team on paper should be beating Burnley, but I still look at this 11. I still look at the subs and go, where should it be? I know, of course, injuries is important, but that's a mid-table team. If I'm honest with you, against Burnley, who have a championship, upper championship, probably like really lower where they are now, Premier League team, if we're being kind. So the Tottenham have the better team on paper. But again, I just think, Frank got it wrong with the lineup. Ultimately, as someone who likes him, it's just common sense to know that we're playing 2 games a week, most weeks at the moment. And when you have the case of Tell, who's in good form, I'm going to single him up because, we've not got many players available. And Tell's one that's important here because he's playing well. We're at risk of losing him and he's fit and ready to go. I don't see why you wouldn't play him. Of course, you've got to, maximize Burnley's weakness or play to our strengths. But, why aren't you picking Tell? If that means now that, because it's still a possibility, I don't think he will. I don't think the club will allow him. But if he wants to leave on loan, you're not going to help him by putting him on the bench. Someone that's fit, in form, ready to go and to keep them happy. I just can't see why you would go around the houses with that. I mean, again, we don't know everything that goes on, but it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right at all because he's the one putting in those performances. So team's good enough, but I look at the bench as well. Cowlin, with all due respect, I think, are you going to have an impact on the game? No, absolutely not. Let's go round to the rest of the top 8 teams, whether they've got an injury crisis or not. None of them have got as bad a crisis as us with injuries, yes, but they have players that can impact games. That's the problem, whereas we don't. That is my issue. It goes back to it. But that team, again, it's not what I would have picked. And of course, the manager has to take criticism. Again, if something doesn't work, you're the manager, you're the head coach, whatever way you want to put it, you have to take responsibility. But also the players on the pitch need to do more. The centre-backs are stepping up, but others need to as well. And the reality is, whether we like Frank or not, whether we want him in or out or not, majority want him out, that we created more than enough opportunities in this game. If stats prove that, or if you watch game with your eye, I prefer to watch games with my eyes rather than go off stats or XG. But the first half tells you we've got in goal scoring positions where he created chances but lacked that clinical edge. We've been saying this for a long time. Under Ange Postecoglou, we go 1-0 up, but we'd often lose games by 1. How many times are we 1-0 up and we just ease off the gas a little bit and end up drawing or losing the game? Honestly, carbon copy every week, particularly at home. We're so close to getting that second, pushing, and we couldn't quite get it, and we were punished, usually through an individual error, a lapse in concentration. Oh, believe it or not, absolutely nothing's changed with the way we concede both goals. They're poor. No marking for the first goal. Second goal, it was just like a bunch of clowns, really, defending it. They're just nowhere. They're statues, really. So that's what's frustrating. It's such a familiar story. So Frank's easy to blame, but we've seen this before under different managers. We play okay, can't get the second goal, and are punished because we can't do the basics defensively. 2 basics in football, right? For Spurs' case, pass a white shirt and mark your man. And we didn't do one of those basics in mark players for either of the Burnley goals. So again, we're our own worst enemy. The biggest downfall is on us. But the team, for me, is good enough to go out there and do a job. But again, we have to do more in the transfer window. You cannot be having one winger who's fit. And when everyone's fit, only 2 or 3, that's not enough. We don't have the depth or quality in attacking positions, Chris, to kill games off like other teams do. Boom, let's say Arsenal, they play and I despise them at the best of times. They find a way to get the job done because they've got attacking firepower. They keep pushing like Tottenham do, but they've got the quality to shine through. Make no mistake about it, we haven't, and we're punished as a result, because you could have the great defenders, which you do in Romero and Van der Ven, but they can only take so much pressure. it's constant pressure they receive every game because of incompetent players around the rest of the pitch. So yeah, again, run the houses, but the lineup should be winning the game. That lineup should be winning the game. But also, again, Frank has got to do better. For me, the team selection should be better. I don't see the need to go with a back three. Burnley don't scare me. I don't know about you going forward. Burnley, however, do shut up shop. I don't really understand going with the back three, and meaning that Tell is likely the one compromised to play a back three doesn't make sense.
Luke, let's come to you. Let's talk about Mickey van de Ven's goal. You've all mentioned about the defenders at the moment scoring our goals. No defender in the Premier League has scored more goals than Mickey van de Ven this season so far. What do you make of van de Ven's goal today?
Yeah, it was well taken, especially seeing as he was falling backwards as he managed to strike it. And you can see from that still there that that's obviously, I would say, either his own decision or it's a tactical thing I mean, if you look at how many Burnley players in the box, they'll probably be quite disappointed with that. But he's clever, and this is the thing, he's really good at reading the game. And you saw that defensively when he did that covering run to make the tackle against, I can't remember who it was that managed to get away on their own and almost had a one-on-one. But he just sort of sits off the main group and waits for the ball to bounce, and it landed perfectly. He struck it well because he fell over while he was doing it. And it was brilliant, but it does show that we just don't have players in the box that are going to be clinical other than our centre halves. And we talk about the fact that they are the only two players that really might push. Now Solanke's back, maybe another one, but push to get into other Premier League teams and particularly top six teams. They are by far our best players, and they're the only ones stepping up. Now, whether that is, as was mentioned earlier, that with Brentford, a lot of the defenders scored, so maybe it is a set piece thing. It's Jorgensen, isn't it, that does that, and perhaps he's put the two of them in there, Romero, and I mean Romero's heading ability recently has been incredible, but the two of them are doing really well with it. But we're just far too reliant on it. But it was a very good goal, and I think he's scored mostly with his head, hasn't he, so far? So nice little finish from him. But yeah, I just think. Sorry, go on.
I was going to stick with you to go through Burnley's equaliser just before the half-time break. Of course, there's no, best time to concede a goal, but this is certainly a disappointing time to concede it.
It is, but it's just time and time again the same thing. And I can't, I hope now that Heiting is there working on this, he can get after them on the training ground and say, we've got to stop this. When I was a kid, I played centre half, and the thing we would always shout at each other is, have your head on a swivel, have your head on a swivel, look around. You've got to be able to see who's moving around you, because the forwards aren't just going to stand still. They're not just going to be in the same spot you just saw them in 5 seconds ago. They're moving. You need to be looking around you. And if you just look at that still there, I mean, Danso is obviously pulled out by the Burnley player who's in front of Romero, because Romero hasn't reacted to him. So Danso's moved. That's a mistake, but they've just let him wander in there. It's pathetic. It's actually incredibly poor defending. And it happened twice against Bournemouth. We've seen it happen earlier in the season. It is our massive, massive Achilles heel that if we are flat against our own 6-yard box and a ball comes in, I can tell you now, those players do not know where the offensive players are, and that is so incompetent, honestly. And I talk about the quality just then at the other end, Romero's headers and Van de Ven's positioning and goals, but they're just not doing it at this end. And this was the big danger of Frank's choice in this game. If you choose to play a back five or a back three centre halves, they can't be that open. The point of doing it is that they should be locking up. They should be making sure that nobody has an opportunity. I mean, you look at the number of Burnley players in the box there's twice as many Spurs players. So how he got the space to do that, I have no idea. But, I don't know what it's like on the training ground. If it were me, I would hope someone would turn to me and say, you were in the wrong position there, you've got to stop that, and that together they practice making sure that they can see who's in the box around them, because it's happening too often. And it happened under Ange as well. It was a real weakness under Ange. And, back against the 6-yard box, ball in, they have no idea where the offensive players are, and, scrappy goals. So for me, it's negligent from the players' side, but it's massively negligent from the coaching side. I'd be making those guys stay out and training an hour later and saying to them, "You're not going in until you head the bloody ball away, because you get paid a lot of money to do that, boys, and you just can't do it at the minute. So we're not having that." There is an argument as well. Kate mentioned, of course, and I totally agree. Vicario's sort of inability to distribute the ball and his lack of confidence led to the pressure staying on, and that nice little 1-2 that Burnley had to get that ball in the box. Carl Walker, when he saw the lad at the back post, he must have thought, surely someone's going to get there before him, but I'll stick the ball in, and but he did. You could even argue Vicario maybe could have been a bit more confident and come out for the cross. He sort of actually gets caught between the forward and his own goal line. He sort of half comes out and doesn't really commit either way, but I wouldn't blame him. I'd say there's 3 centre-halves in front of him. They should have been formed up. They should have seen who was around them. Really, really poor from Spurs, but also a repeated mistake, which is just not good enough.
Luke, just a very quick yes or no. Are we a better team or a worse team than under Ange Postecoglou last season?
Worse.
Kate, let's come to you. Let's talk about Burnley's second goal. This was after 76 minutes. Lyle Foster, of course, Burnley's sub. Goalmouth scramble, 14 minutes from time. What do you make of it?
Just shambolic again, really. Really poor defensively. I just find that our defenders stand off too much from the opposition. They don't ever go in and try and get the ball back. They kind of stand off and wait for something to happen, which I find really frustrating. But I knew it was coming. I said to Jim, I fear the worst. I just knew it was coming. You could see we was giving them too much space. And yeah, I mean, Vicario, again, I think he should have done better here. If I was an opposition manager, I'd be saying just put pressure on their keeper, because he's very shaky. He looks like his head's already out of the club. I think he knows he's going to be going and he wants to go. And yeah, like I say, I just could see it coming a mile away. But I think it was the first goal. Yeah, it was. I think it was Van der Ven on a player, and I don't like to criticise Van der Ven because I think he's brilliant, but they just stand off and wait for the defender to do things. And I miss defenders that go in and get into the player and try and win the ball back that way. But I think our whole team's short of confidence at the minute. And just touching on what you said about Pochettino, I kind of get what Harry says and going back to your ex and all that crap. But things have changed in the fact that Levy has gone. And although the board probably won't change, they probably won't. I do still think Poch gets more out of this team because they've made this big point of releasing a statement about bridging the gap with the academy. And I think Poch is underrated at how much he actually developed the young players at our team. So I think there is definitely an argument for Poch coming back to the club. But yeah, like I say, going back to this, it's just shambolic defending. And again, I just think Vicario is too weak, much, much too weak as a first choice keeper in the Premier League.
Harry, let's come to you. Let's talk about Romero's equaliser in the 90th minute, because it seems at the moment that our centre-back pairing are saying, well, if the attackers aren't going to do it, we're going to do it for you.
Exactly that, and it's concerning others don't step up. I think you have a problem when top goal scorers are defenders, and also strikers aren't scoring, attackers aren't scoring, defenders are doing so, and they are literally our most likely threat going forward. And Van der Ven, great finish early, and for this one that you're showing on screen now, for those watching live, it's a fantastic finish from Romero, again a bullet header, and I think he's someone that gets a lot of criticism, but unfairly. I think he's silenced those doubters. He's silenced those critics, really, because he's quality. I think we knew that, but I think always the concern is about his rash side. But for me, he is a good captain, whatever people say, because a captain's there when you need him most. He's the one apologising. He's the one talking to the media. Romero does all these things, despite previous criticism. And, I think ultimately in the situation we're in, him and Van der Ven are doing very well. You could, again, be picking, go Van der Ven for the second goal, gets turned inside out too easily. But again, his goal is absolutely key. So both defenders are great. But the problem is, where we sit, where we are right now in the league and the state we're in, how long do we have these players realistically? We know Romero's thoughts on the owners. He's not wrong. If a player feels like that, which I promise you is extremely rare at a club, to feel like that, A, is one thing, but B, to speak the way he has on 2 separate occasions and not even apologise, and rightly so, for the second occasion, that, for me, he's not the only one that thinks like that. He's not the only one who knows these kind of things. So the point is, these owners make it difficult for the likes of Romero, and it'll be the same with Van der Ven, to stay at the club. So when do we get to a point where we go, actually, these owners are really holding the football club back? But on this goal that you've asked me about, it's a really good goal from Romero. It's really good position aerially, and we saw Burnley score from Tuanzebe, who is what I call the spare man. But we should be countering that, because when you play with 3 centre-backs, the idea is you stop that spare man. So that was incredibly disappointing that he had the freedom of the park. Tuanzebe could still be bringing the ball down now. He could have had 111 touches. Nobody's going to get the ball off him because there's nobody near him. That's the reality. But for our goal, it was nicely taken. And again, I go back to what Conte used to say, and Mourinho used to say similar. If you can't, for whatever reason, win a game, make sure you don't lose it. So it's really good to see that we didn't, go and lose that, but it's still not a good result. It feels like very much like Wolves, if you remember, where we score a late goal to stop it being worse. So it's bad rather than embarrassing. It's still not good enough for Tottenham. Good goal and fair play to Romero.
Can I just ask you all the same question? And this would be the last question on the podcast tonight. Harry, I'm going to start with you. Can sometimes the Spurs fan base be a bit impatient? And should we be more patient with Thomas Frank? Are we going to be sitting here in, say, 6 months' time saying to each other and laughing about it that we all got it wrong under Thomas Frank? Can it work under Thomas Frank? Can things be? Can it feel very differently to what it does now? And also, how do you see this panning out? And also, add in, if you like, anything that we haven't discussed tonight that you want to get off your chest. Go for it.
Goodness me, I could talk for England as it is, Chris, on a daily basis. So I don't want to keep you that long. We want to, finish the podcast before our next game, before another poor showing, I'm sure. Listen, I'm not going to tell fans what to think, what to say, how to feel. I've banged my drum about being patient. I banged my drum about entitlement, and it doesn't go well. I think I still will press. It's a serious point to be made. I feel because we won a trophy last year, and Ange Postecoglou for me is a Tottenham great for that. I'd go as far as saying Ange is a Tottenham legend in my eyes. So before people say, "Oh, where was the support that you showed under Ange?" Yeah, I was there. I do believe that. Of course, we all were probably Ange out in periods, but in the end, extremely grateful. First trophy in my lifetime. But that was a problem because that created expectation for Thomas Frank. I feel that because of the way we started the season, as well as winning in Bilbao. So when I talk about the start of the season, we went toe-to-toe with the best team in the world in PSG. We beat Man City. Okay, we beat this side Burnley at home. So that's evidence that we've gone backwards, by the way, which of course is unfortunate. But because we had that good start, on top of what we achieved in the summer, I just remember having the conversation with my dad. He's like, we're close to Arsenal. I remember saying at the time, when our race is not with Arsenal at all. Is that whether we like it or not, we probably find ourselves in a difficult situation in the league again. And the reality is, this is no coincidence that we in my opinion, we've become a mid-table club without the identity, because the tools that we've been given are only enough to compete in one competition. So when the club sat here and somehow, lied through their teeth to say that we have the aim, and B, that we will, they actually said we will compete on all 4 fronts. That's just a straight right lie. And when I talk about Enid gaslighting the fans, this is an example of that. Any manager in charge of Tottenham now, there's some managers I agree that could do a better job, no doubt. But no manager's going to compete on multiple fronts. We're only competing in the Champions League, right? I have no doubt about that. And last year, we only really competed realistically in the Europa League. But also, people do forget, just to add on there, to contradict myself a little bit, we also competed in the Carabao Cup. We got to the semi-final, beat Liverpool in the first leg. So when people say that Ange, was only kind of one-dimensional, one competition, that's not true. Carabao Cup semi-final wasn't bad. So I just want to throw that hat into the ring. I feel like we've become a club right now that is going to be permanently mid-table. I feel like we're in a similar situation with Everton, unfortunately, and Everton have a fantastic history, but with Tottenham, great supporters, and do have also, by the way, even if not be as much, great history and a lot to shout about. But I feel like our best days are unfortunately behind us. If I'm being totally honest with you, I think we've become this club now that will likely target a single competition and try and progress and try and win it. I don't think we've got the tools or the ability, unless something changes fundamentally upstairs, to do more in one competition. So yeah, Chris, I'm frustrated. I think as Spurs fans, we need to be patient, right? The reality is we've gone through too many managers in a short period of time, right? And I think we've made poor appointments and poor sackings. Yeah, we instantly throw a manager under the bus. I think, yeah, whether you like Mourinho or not, I certainly didn't at the best of times, especially when he was here. Don't get me wrong, but he shouldn't have been sacked just before that cup final. That's an example of, again, club getting entitled. So for me, when we achieve something great, it's also a knockback to, because it, sense of entitlement, and there is a sense of entitlement in this fan base. I'll say it like, lightly. We have this expectation to play a certain way, and I think there's some fans maybe listen to this, or some Spurs fans in general, that would rather play pretty football and lose this game 2-1 than play turgid football and draw. And that for me is an issue. That for me is an issue because football is a results-based business. Thomas Frank is a results-based manager. And Frank, that's why he's brought in. And I thought Frank was the right manager, if that makes sense, to go from Ange, because Frank brings typically in his career stability and that sensible element. I feel because of the injuries, the likes of James Maddison, equivalent to what Frank had with Damsgaard at Brentford, we've retracted and been really defensive. So the reality is, Frank is saying it how it is. I'll make this point lastly. Frank is saying, I liked Ange, right? He was a good talker, but a lot of it was bluff. Frank is a bad communicator. Ange is a really good communicator. But just because that is the case doesn't mean that they're, what they say, one's right, one's wrong. And I don't like this, one or the other in terms of Frank or Ange. I appreciate both and what they've done, but arguably neither were perfect because they weren't given, the right tools. But the point is, Ange told us what we want to hear. Ange told us we're great, proud history. And Ange said a lot of the right things that got us fans on board. Frank is saying we're not where we should be. And Frank has said lightly that we're not Arsenal at the moment and we're not really at the level of a Champions League club. These are the right things, but he goes about it in the wrong way. A lot of it gets lost in translation and he puts it across really poorly. And if you listen to that interview there, I mean, you can make a whole minute compilation out of and the stutters that are in there, and that for me is a bad communicator. And when you're a bad communicator, you can't get your message across to the fans. So how are we meant to get behind something that we don't know what we'll get behind? So that's, for me, the real problem. Frank is saying the right things. Frank's being honest. I'd rather a manager be honest about a situation. But sometimes being too honest will cost you in life, in football. And right now for Thomas Frank, being too honest and also being too naive and being too clumsy. Arsenal Cup incident I'll talk about. That's clumsy behaviour. Raving about Arsenal, that's clumsy behaviour. He's right. Arsenal are in a fantastic place. We want to be where they are. Frank's right. But you cannot be saying that every week as Tottenham manager. It's not a good look at all. It doesn't go down well with the fan base when we're angry that they're so much better than us. So my point is, I hope that we can turn this around. I hope we can continue to do well, for example, in the Champions League. But I believe Frank is being honest, but he's not a Tottenham manager, right? Because I think it's wrong, but as a club, as a fan base, we have this entitlement that I think is outdated. But anyway, it's how we should play football, and that is the pretty way. We all want to play pretty football, but we all want to get results as well. We all want to have it the right way. But the reality is managers don't get long enough. But I'll leave it there. I'm not happy right now as a Spurs fan. I'm hoping we can turn it around because if you can't tell already, the positive energy for me is slipping away. I want to defend this manager. I want to defend this club, but I don't see us progressing at all.
Yeah, it's hard. Luke, same questions to you. And I was also going to ask as well if there are anything that you want to say about the positivity about Thomas Frank since he's come in the door from Ange Postecoglou. What are the positives if there are any for you?
That's a tough question after what we've just been talking about for the last hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to go back a bit in time and just say that I think you asked about the fans and are we too quick. I grew up in the 90s going to Spurs with my dad, and the experience for me was never that we were going to watch a team challenge him for the league. The thing that everybody always wanted, and you could feel it in the grounds, we just wanted Spurs to attack. We wanted them to have a go. We wanted them to score goals. We loved our flair players. Of course, there were a lot of people sitting around me in the stands who were, the sort of my dad's generation and of his dad's generation, who would watch Tottenham win absolutely everything, who had seen them go through the 60s to the 80s, winning a trophy every sort of 3 years. And I didn't see that. And I loved going to see Spurs, and I loved the club. And we had that 1 or 2 years where we flirted with relegation, and the White Hart Lane was absolutely deafening all the time. And we went to a couple of away games. We went to Old Trafford, for example. We went to Villa Park, actually. And I remember thinking, wow, it's not as noisy here. they don't sing as loud. They're not as passionate. And I might have been wrong. It might have changed since then. It may very well have. But I remember thinking that's why I love Spurs, because we just love this football club. And it's not about what they're achieving. And it was about memories of my dad and the time we were spending together. But then it evolved, didn't it? It evolved as Enoch bought the club and they started turning it into something else. It was very much like having a favourite pub or restaurant that suddenly gets bought out by a chain, and it might get flashy and suddenly you can order your food on an electronic menu or something like that, and it loses its soul a little bit. And I fear that that's a little bit what has happened with Tottenham, is that the owners run the business side of the club incredibly well and are absolutely clueless when it comes to the footballing side. But I think they're also willfully ignorant about it. They know that actually if they just keep putting that little bit more in, we can keep the club going, but we're not really willing to back it or invest it properly. So no, I don't think the Spurs fans are impatient. I think we've been on the precipice of success. We've seen the Premier League evolve. We've seen the teams around us improve. We've been right on the cusp of winning everything, absolutely everything, right? And we have failed. And we've seen failure time and time and time again. And the evidence is there. Harry's laid it out perfectly. The board, the people that own the club, were never willing to push it on. They did an incredible job of turning it into the thing you can see behind me, which is not the thing I went to as a little boy. That is incredible. And I love going there. It's amazing. I'm proud of it. I've taken friends there as well and gone, look at this. Isn't this amazing? It is. But it means absolutely nothing if we don't have good football as well, or football that we love, that we're passionate about, that we want to go and see. And I struggle to find a positive, Chris, in Thomas Frank, because what has happened, this intense pragmatism has drained the excitement from going to watch Tottenham. It really has. I think there was enough tucking the talent on the pitch today to actually really have a go at Burnley. And he was frightened of losing the game. The players were frightened of losing the game. The only positive I can take from it is that I hope that the board re-evaluate their own set of criteria for a manager once Thomas Frank goes. That it gives them the opportunity to say, we did try that. We actually tried that. We thought it would work. We thought that he would be the right man, because he is a clever man. He does have a footballing brain. He does think about these things in depth and detail. He clearly has been successful in the past. He's not a crap manager. I think he's taken the wrong approach. That's what it is. And my feeling is, if they don't learn from this, we are doomed to continue repeating that cycle. The problem, and I think I worry about, to make my last point, is they lurch somewhere to try and appease everyone, like Levy did. Levy admitted with those appointments of Mourinho and Conte, they were to try and get success straight away because he realised he shouldn't have sacked Poch. So he was like, I've got to get someone in that's going to try and win something immediately because that'll shut everyone up. The irony is, the one who won the trophy was the one he didn't even like. So that just shows you how good he was at picking managers. I just want to say one quick thing, get off my chest about Poch. Everyone's really going on about it, and he is a legend for me, and I love the man, but I think it would be the biggest mistake the club would have made, bigger than any other manager, if we go back to him. And I'll try and be very brief about it. The reason I think that is because, as Kate mentioned earlier, the Premier League evolves, everything moves on. When he came to us, he had turned a Southampton team into taking them from relegation form to 8th. His big thing was their fitness. He was making them throw up in training. They were working incredibly hard. They suddenly went from bottom to top of the Premier League in distance run and miles covered. And that was his thing. He wanted intense pressing. He wanted to squeeze teams, make them make mistakes, and play the entire game in their half. And that's what he was really, really good at. And he came to Spurs and he got them doing that. And with the likes of Kane and Son and Eriksen, who really became these incredible players, and under him, the team was able to push on even higher than Southampton were at the time. It was amazing. But football moves on. Look at Guardiola this season. He's spent a ton of money and he's really struggling. Barring today's win, he's struggling week in, week out now because things change. We've got this weird thing we're in at the moment where teams are playing tight football and winning games on set pieces, and that's what Arsenal are doing. It's not exciting. It is the in thing at the moment. I worry that Pochettino comes back in and he's out of date now. He's old hat. And can you imagine how that would feel for us if he came back and he failed? I think we'd all feel so low if the guy we thought would be our saviour comes back and he just doesn't have a clue, and it fails. I mean, I think we'd be in a really bad place. And the last thing I want to say is contractually, it makes no sense. He's with the US to the end of the World Cup. He's not going to say he's going to leave the US during the World Cup. That would be damaging for their World Cup campaign. They're the hosts, the host nation. So he isn't going to do anything in terms of contract talks with Tottenham until the end of the World Cup, which would give him how many weeks between finishing the World Cup and starting the Premier League. Like, we need a manager that obviously won't have all of his players, but can get into the club before the season ends, in my opinion, get into it, understand it a bit, meet the players, take some training sessions, and have a whole summer of planning, not someone who's going to be very busy and distracted. Thank you.
And Kate, finally with you.
I mean, just quickly on the Poch thing, it's only going to be like that if they go a long way in the World Cup, which I don't expect them to. But for me, he's the only one who gets the club, the fan base will give him the time. And I truly believe it's the right time. But, you know, it's not in our hands. I think we've got worse under Thomas Frank than we did under Ange. For me to even consider keeping him when, for me, there's been no improvement whatsoever under this manager is bonkers, and a real weak mentality from the club. I think that there is an element that Tottenham fans can be impatient, like all fans. It's not just Tottenham, it's all fans. However, you can't expect patience when you're not seeing improvement. It's as easy as that. And I don't see anything. Yet Thomas Frank will sit there and say, we're doing all the right things. And I think, well, I don't know what you're watching because I'm not seeing it. He doesn't dare. He doesn't do. They're the two mottos of this club, and he doesn't do either. So, you know, I know Luke said he grew up in the 90s. I grew up in the 80s with the likes of the Hoddles, the Waddles, the Mabbotts, you know, and yeah, we're a shadow of that now. But this guy is nowhere near good enough. He's not got the mentality for this club, and I want him gone as soon as possible. Oh, not Chris. That was timing, wasn't it? I want him gone as soon as possible, and Chris went. For me, there's just I just don't think there's any going back. Once you've lost the away fans, that's it. And you, like I say, he doesn't fit in with the ethos of the club. And yeah, and brilliant what he did in Europe, even though the games and the season was turgid in the Premier League. For me, Frank, it's got no credit in the bank. We need to cut our losses and get rid.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's never easy talking about a game like today. I was going to say a defeat. It feels like one. But yeah, it's you know, only things can get better, right?
Well, that's what the song says. Not that I'm going to sing, but apparently things can only get better. But thank you as always for having me on, Chris. It was win, lose or draw. It's always nice to have a chat anyway.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Harry, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
Chris, thank you for having me. You can follow me at Harry Scarfe too across all socials. I also have my own YouTube channel, and for me, the priority is as someone who's autistic, giving people with learning disabilities an opportunity and a platform. We see with football, but also away from football, how, you know, people with physical and learning disabilities, in my view, are neglected and, you know, painted in the wrong way. And I just, you know, think they deserve opportunity to speak about football and, you know, to collaborate with and to speak to interviews, wherever you want to put it, with about 130 people with learning disabilities last year. Meant a lot. So, you know, created the channel as kind of my safe place. I love, can't tell already, talking, and I absolutely love Tottenham. So that was the idea behind it. And, you know, I want others to be able to experience the same. So honestly, real pleasure coming on here. Always good. Really enjoy it. And fantastic panelists. And if people might not agree with my opinions, that's fine. You know, again, it's only opinion. And, you know, I know I can talk for England and I probably speak a lot of rubbish, but thank you to the chat. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And Chris, thank you very much.
Harry, keep up the great work. Thank you so much. And Luke, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me on, Chris. Really great to chat to you all and to meet Kate and Harry. And the last thing I'd say is, Chris, your thing you always say, you never, even when you might want a manager out, you never want your team to lose. And I think the last thing I'm going to say to leave with a bit of positivity is, don't forget this. There's the players, there's the manager, there's the owners, and then there's us. And Tottenham Hotspur is us. It's none of the others. They come and go, right? We are always there. Now, they might upset us make it difficult to support them. We are Spurs, so don't forget that. We love our club. Don't forget why you love it and why you started loving it in the first place. And if you're going to a game, sing loud and proud and keep them going for the whole 90 plus minutes, even if it's absolutely dreadful and dire, because that's what the club is, and that's what I fell in love with as a Spurs fan. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Kate, Luke and Harry, thank you so much for your time. Now, with the viewers and listeners, I'm going to leave you with the Thomas Frank press conference for the next 7 minutes or so. We were going to preview the Frankfurt game in this game, but we'll do that another time. I'll probably record a fan show before flying off to Frankfurt. So, yeah, we'll leave you with Thomas Frank. But thanks so much for watching, everyone, and thanks for listening. And Kate, thank you. Luke, thank you. Harry, thank you. Have a good rest of the weekend.
You too.
How do you see that? As like 1 point gained or 2 dropped with all the saves that Dubravka had to make?
The last bit, sorry.
Dubravka had to make a lot of saves.
Yeah. Now Dubravka was man of the match. He was that for a reason. That means we did a lot of things right offensively. I think we came here, took some of the confidence from the game against Dortmund into the game. I think first half we were good. I think actually we were very good. Dominating the game, on top of the game, scoring 1-0 goal, created other chances, opportunities, could have done the 2-0, more or less. If not out of sight, then we're definitely in a very good way to try to win a football match. Then we concede a chance. We give nothing away first half except the goal in the end of the first half. We can never, ever, ever concede that goal. Because it just changed a little bit of momentum going into halftime. And then the second half we're coming out. We're not as dominant, but I still think we are okay on top. We've got a big chance to Dominic Solanke, got 2-1 up, and then we concede another goal that we can never, ever, ever concede. That make it difficult for us. But big praise to the players for showing their character and running power and willpower to keep going. And we created big chance to match it to Xavi. I think there was one more, and then the goal. So did more than enough to get the equalizer. And over the game, I think we did more than enough to win it. So, but unfortunately not.
How frustrating is it? Romero and Van der Ven, your goal scorers, obviously both terrific goals, but it's defenders again scoring the goals.
Yeah, it's fantastic that the two defenders are scoring again, because that is very positive. But of course, we need more from the offensive players. They know it. They work very hard on it. It's not that they don't want, but of course we need that. So the day we add that together, plus defending a tiny bit better, then we will win.
So Porro and Romero, the two substitutions, are they injuries?
No, Romero was cramping in the end. Pedro was a physical, how can you say, played a lot of minutes, so have more running power jet to the right, and then the Destiny in.
Last one for me. The fans, you can hear it then again, the boos, the chants against you. How do you kind of block that?
First and foremost, want to thank them for travelling and support the team throughout the game, which they do. I'm sure they can recognise and acknowledge, especially the first half and the improvement we've done there, and should have been outside. But also they acknowledge the how can I say, the willpower and character of the team that keep running, keep fighting to the end. And we just need to keep going. We do so many things right, but there's no doubt when you are, how can you say, it's not dropping so easy for us. The consistent performance we've done, which I think I've said that many times, they are actually in an okay level. But we apparently, because where we are now, we need to do more to make sure we get the wins over the line, especially in the Premier League. And one of the bits is to play every fourth day to perform. That demands a lot of mentality. We have a few injuries, that doesn't help, but that's part of it. Never any complaints about me, that's reality. But that's why we need to be strong enough as a team to keep performing every third or fourth day.
Yeah.
Thomas, it's impossible to disagree with your summation of the game, only to say that in the second half it did change, you did lose that control, it became very open. You did look vulnerable when they broke on you. Is that a confidence thing, that one goal before half time just kind of changes their mindset a little bit?
I think there's definitely something, I've said that before, the ability to handle setbacks in games. That's something we are working very hard on, which I actually think we've done better and better. This was, I would say, at the 1-1. The first part of the second half, I think, is an area we need to do better to control it and just keep doing the right things. Where I think, especially after the 2-1 goal, we found extra willpower and determination, which is hugely beneficial. But also sometimes it's margins. So if we score on Dom's 2-1 goal, I'm pretty sure we would be in a fine place.
Yeah, Thomas, I see what you're saying again about the team and the fans' support behind the team and whatnot. What would your message be to them who are basically calling for your head, not to put too fine a point on it, when you, on one hand, you've got 1 foot in the last 16 of the Champions League, and yet one more bad performance and they turn on you again?
One more
message be to them?
What was you said one more bad performance?
Yeah,
I don't think it was a bad performance.
Well,
it was maybe not the result we hoped for.
It was a
Yeah.
result and they weren't happy with it.
Yeah, I think the performance, if you look at it throughout the game, especially the first half, was good. The way we ended again, good. Average second half, which you've seen many times, and then unfortunately it lacked with 2 moments where we didn't defend it well enough. And that's what we are working very, very, very hard on to try to get on top of. And while we are fighting everything we can to perform in Champions League and Premier League, that's the way it is.
Well, that's what, what would your message be to those fans who were turning on you again at the end?
I think the message to the fans, as I said the whole time, is that we're working very hard on make sure everything is going in the right direction, and that we'll keep doing that.
Okay.
Thomas, the fixtures in the Premier League recently have, with respect to those teams, been against easier opposition in relative terms. The fixtures are going to get harder from here. What gives you confidence or belief that the team can do what they need to do against a higher level of team?
I never look ahead to see how the fixtures look. I think in the Premier League every game is incredibly difficult. I think every head coach, every manager I speak to think the same. And right now we have the next game ahead of me, or us, is Frankfurt away. another difficult one, but where we have a great opportunity to finish in the last 8, and that's what we're focusing on.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask about Andy Robertson, by the way? That's been widely speculated as close to happening. It will obviously help you today defensively.
Just on that one, in general, you don't know me that well. I don't speak about players that's not in the club, except Ronaldo and Messi. So that's no comment. Yeah.
Now, thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for listening. If you are you watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share, and comment below. And just to let you know that Spurs have finished the day in 14th, where we started the day, 28 points from 23 games. That is 8 points above the relegation zone, and we are now 7 points off 5th, where Manchester United are currently. Try to enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, come on, you Spurs.